7.9 and AM 990. Here's Business Spotlight from your local voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990. And here's your host, George Bryant.
Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday morning, and what a great day. It's the sun is shining. It looks like it's going to be a little bit cooler today, which is, man, God, it's been steamy. But you know what Tuesdays are? Tuesdays are Let's Talk Growth. It's Triumph Day, and also we get to spend a little time with Tracy Strickland. She is a senior VP of marketing for one of the best banks in the Mid-South, Triumph Bank. Welcome, Tracy.
Well, thanks, George. I always love being here, and I love how you talk so well about our bank. And I'm really, really excited. I think I've gotten a coup that I've been able to get our special guest on. I didn't have to twist arms too terribly, but I am beyond thrilled to have Mike McCarver today as our special guest. He is our Chief Operating Officer, Executive VP at the bank. And my favorite little tidbit about Mike, one of my very favorite tidbits, is that he was the very first employee at Triumph.
That's incredible.
So back I guess it was about 13 years ago when the founders were putting together the bank. And then I would love for you to talk about that, Mike, but, what it was like to be a first employee and what in the world were you thinking when you did that? But number one, welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome to our studios,
us.
and it's an honor to have you here.
But, I guess 12 and a half, 13 years ago when obviously you've had a lifelong career in banking. But when the founders came to you and said, hey, we've got this idea for a bank, what was going through your mind when they invited you to join?
Well, the first thought that comes to someone's mind when you're asked about that, you're very flattered that they would think of you in doing that. I had a previous experience in starting a bank before that was in the process of being sold, and so they came and said, would you want to try it again? and I said, sure, let's talk about who the investors are. So that's where we started in the idea that the investors had of using the acquisitions and mergers that were happening in Memphis back in the 2004, 2005, that there was some customers that were being, having to change banks and change processes, and so that really was part of the initial genesis of doing this. It's a small world that when we first started, Tracy was working for Lane Carrick at Sovereign Wealth Management, and Lane was one of the organizing directors. And so Lane offered us to use a couple of his offices in his space while we got started. And so Tracy and I met in 2005, and it was another,
several handful of years before I joined. I guess 8 more years, but I loved getting to work with Mike, and we could see the formation of something really special. But when you started, what was the first impetus, Mike, for you to get started in a banking career? Was it just because you needed a job? Was it like you had a financial background? I don't think I've ever heard this story.
It was pure luck, just absolutely pure luck. My high school math teacher's wife worked at the Federal Reserve Bank, and I was completing my high school, and so he had asked me if I wanted to go talk to the Federal Reserve to see about a summer job, and in 1974, and I said absolutely. Had nothing else going on then, and so June 3rd, 1974, I started working at the Federal Reserve in the mailroom. So now 44 years later, still trying to figure out what I want to do.
That's exactly right. Now he's driving a Jeep and has this gogoatee and is the coolest dude around. So I love that. I had no idea about that. I love that story. Well, I know, George, we always end up bringing our bankers and our team that are very forward-facing in front of customers, the ones that are caring for them every day. But without Mike's expertise on the administrative side and the operation side, literally nothing that we do could occur. So, Mike is an absolute citywide, regional-wide banking expert as far as putting operations together and just how do you run a bank. And I know when I first joined, even though I had known Mike for years, I realized that Mike has had a part in every single thing that has happened at Triumph. So do you want to touch on just the importance of a really great back office administration and operations and how you've been able to make it so successful for us?
Sure. With any company, there's the sales side and there's the admin side of the company, and there are the importance of the support side really comes from a willingness to adopt the sales side as your customer, and there are a certain focus on processes, a focus on learning how the whole piece comes together. Really helps you then to support the sales side, which helps the company grow.
Oh yeah, well it's integral. I mean, and I know that you've seen over 40 years of a career in banking. As any industry changes, banking has had some incredibly dramatic changes. I mean, I've only been at the bank for less than 5 years, and I've seen massive changes as far as our technology. But I know that you've seen all the kind of changes in how we deliver the transactions information to our customers over the years. Can you speak on those changes?
Yeah, what's been interesting for me over the years is to really to watch the way the lobby activity in a bank has changed from the times where you had queuing lanes in the lobby, and a big part of the Friday afternoon flow of traffic was cashing checks for the employees of our companies and our customers. And over time, we've seen the transactions move from the paper-based checks to ACH, where you get your direct deposit for payroll, to where more and more of commerce and transactions are being handled over the internet and over electronic means. And so the whole personality of the tellers and the employees in the lobby are moving away from handling the day in, day out transactions to becoming more of a consultant to the customer, to learning what the customer needs, what the customer wants, what they're looking for from Triumph Bank.
And
I'm sorry. Excuse me. We were talking. I was just going to let our listeners know, in case you're just tuning in, we're talking with Mike McCarver. He's Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Triumph Bank, your local community bank right here in the Mid-South. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dig in a little bit more about all the changes in the new way banks are operated from Mike's point of view. And you're listening to The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
Now, here's your Mid-South weather forecast from the News Channel 3 Severe Weather Center and Todd Demers, right here on KWAM The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
Partly sunny, continued warm and humid, temperatures in the lower 90s and a 20% chance of afternoon showers. Winds today will be from the southwest. Increasing rain chances for your Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, with afternoon highs falling into the mid and upper 80s. The Racquet Club proud to introduce a new wellness program, Live Well. Wellness is not a destination, it's a lifestyle. For more information, call the Racquet Club at 901-765-4444. I'm News Channel 3's Todd Demers on The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
And now back to Business Spotlight on The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
Welcome back to our studios. It's Let's Talk Growth with Triumph Bank here on Tuesday as we turn our spotlight on one of our great business partners, Triumph Bank. And in the studio, we got a special guest, Mike McCarver, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and our host, Tracy Strickland.
I'm glad to be back, and I'm thrilled to have Mike on with us. Mike has had a lifelong career in banking, like we've mentioned earlier, but he's also had a massive hand in building and starting so many community banks. And I know being the first employee, that's why they, one of the reasons why they reached out to Mike in the early 2000s to start Triumph. But I know one of the things that we talk about, because obviously Mike directly works with our board of directors. He sits on the board, of course, but we also have this awesome group of shareholders. We have our customers. We have our team. And how you manage all of those, obviously, for us as investors and looking out into the community, we want to make sure we have a good market share in the city of, growing our bank and being able to be more apparent out to the whole community. But it's also our business is about personal relationships. And I know every day with Mike's role, he's got to weigh both of those when he's making decisions on what's best for Triumph. So when you wake up in the morning, Mike, I mean, what do you look at and how do you make those decisions every day? Because I know some of them have got to be harder than others for sure.
Well, I think about that. You've heard the theory of the three-legged stool of investors, customers, and employees, and it really is true that there's equal balance and equal value that each of the three legs plays in keeping the stool standing up. And while there are times where the employee should take a backseat to investors or to customers, and investors, there's a certain give and take in all that, but there's a constant effort to create a blend for addressing everyone's need. We have an incredible group of talented, caring people at Triumph Bank who every day we're learning how to help our customers be more successful, and along the way we're finding success as well. And so that's what I think about is how can we, as a company, blend the needs of investors, customers, and employees, and learn how to help each other be successful.
And I know even when we were in the process of rebranding Triumph, and that was one of my first initiatives when I got there, and figuring out what would our tagline be that would resonate to all three of those audiences. So when our branding team came with the idea of Let's Talk Growth, that's really where this was an impetus, because we wanted to have a message that spoke to our investors, because we want their market share and their investment to grow, but we want it to have a culture that's led. And we'll talk about our talent in just a minute that Catherine Duncan, our ongoing guest, talks about, to build a culture that our team feels like they can grow. And then, of course, why we wake up in the morning is for our customers and to help them succeed and all that. So I know if you go to our website, triumphbank.com, we feature our customers' stories, and we call them My Triumph, and that's our campaign. So I have a feeling that's what Mike really feels is his triumph, is being able to make those decisions every day so that everybody can continue to grow in their own goals. But obviously along the way there's challenges. And I wanted Mike to talk about what he feels like are his greatest challenges as running the administrative and operations. Can you talk to us about that, Mike?
Sure. The first piece that I think about is that if you drive down Poplar, the business spine of Memphis, that there are lots of banks and lots of signs and lots of names. And so how do we distinguish ourselves from each other? And it does really start with service. It sounds very simple. It sounds sometimes overblown, but service really is the key. If we create the customer experience that they will tell 10 people about it. If it's not a good experience, they'll tell 10 people about that as well. And so when you start with the service side of it, then you have to then go and look at the way that our industry has changed with delivering transactions and delivering information to our customers, to our management team, to our investors, to our employees. That change, and it's progressing forward, is part of the biggest challenge we have, is making sure that we can cleanly, quickly, and safely hand off not only account information but also transactions and deliver payments to these groups. When we first started, when I first started, back when, I remember the passbook savings account, and you took the little book into the teller, and the teller actually recorded the deposit in the checkbook or the little passbook for you. And now we get all the information that we need about our account balances delivered to our iPhone. And that's a tremendous change, and so part of my challenge and a message I try to speak to folks at the bank is that how can we keep looking forward? What's the best way with clarity we can see around the corner? Because the way that my children will be receiving information and my granddaughters will start receiving and handling banking information is going to be much different than the way I do today as the way I did when 30 years ago.
And, Mike, it brings up an interesting question in my mind because I know, it happens the same in broadcast. Everything is changing and moving. You're talking about since 1974 being at your first foot, stepping into a bank and you seeing how transactions were. Are there anything that stands out in your mind that you wish would not have happened in the changes for banking?
Wow, George, that's a big question. What's really frustrating part of we in banking is that the bad guys are staying up at night figuring out ways to use technology to grab in.
Because we've opened ourselves up, man.
That's right. That's right. And I wish would have changed would have been just that. To not have to spend so much time and energy and effort to deal with safeguarding information. Why can't you leave your back door open?
Right.
But you just can't, and that's reality. And so we can't keep hoping for that. We have to plan for the alternative.
Yep.
Right. Well, I know that we were talking about some challenges. I mean, you looked at it as a challenge when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about today. But finding and retaining talent, we've got an awesome team. And I wanted you to talk. I know George was asking you about it downstairs before we got started.
Everybody wants to know.
I think another part was, as far as the experience is the team that you put in front of the customers every day. And I think it's one of the hurdles that any company faces. But can you talk about why we've got such a great team?
Well, we do have a fabulous team, and it really starts with the personality of the board and the personality of the management team. That we've all have they're all, for the most part, successful business people here in Memphis. Most of our lives have been spent here in Memphis. We use Catherine Duncan as our HR director, and she is very active in job fairs, and she's to talk about Triumph Bank and talk about the ways that we try to help develop people so that they become better business men and women and leaders, and that if you provide an environment that people can succeed and grow and develop, that they will stay, or they will encourage their counterparts to come join us.
Yeah.
And so that's really part of our push is to continue to make sure that we can develop our people internally, so that they have a vision of where they're growing professionally, and that in turn will spread the word as quickly as anything else.
It does create a culture, and like you say, you always hear it starts from the top. So it's your point's well taken. But we had talked downstairs a little bit about another level of that. I know if you're for all of our people who are listening now that are leaders and they're recruiting and growing their business, just like what my challenges are is you got to find these people that fit into that, and how do you go about it? And it was really interesting from a scientific, there is a scientific analytical approach. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you have to think about that from the days of Cain and Abel, you've had salespeople and you had the support side, and both had different DNAs, both had different personality types and approaches to doing their job. And so part of the challenge of management is when you have a position you're trying to fill, that you look at the personality of the person that you want in that job, and because you can hire per personality and teach them the skills.
Right.
It's really difficult to teach personality.
So sometimes don't they, they say the personality to fit the culture.
Right.
But, you bring up another good point that sometimes the job itself has a definition of what type of personality will perform best in a certain position.
That's correct. If you have someone who is, we call them bright, verbal, and attractive. And attractive isn't necessarily a physical attraction. It's an attractive personality, an attractive way of talking to people and communicating with each other. That if you are that part of that bright, verbal, and the attractive part, that there's tremendous success that's available to you no matter what company you work for.
Right.
I think back I went to the Memphis State University, went to CVU for my graduate work, and I look back on that time that I wish I had spent more time learning about communication and how to be a better communicator, because that is so key that when we talk and hire folks, we want them to be able to speak and communicate and write. Because communication goes beyond just what you say. It has a lot to do with how you write, and so if we really want to spend time in the hiring process to try to understand the way that we need that person to communicate in the position that we're hiring.
We're talking with Mike McCarver. He's the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer in our Let's Talk Growth segment with Triumph Bank. Tracy, we just have a few more minutes. I know you've got the time just blew by, and
I know,
Mike,
my
you
gosh.
have been. Thank you for sharing, and thank you
Mike.
for all you do. And
Thank you.
Well, we do have a busy week at Triumph. I'm heading downtown to the Elvis Presley Entertainment Complex later this morning. For the past 4 or 5 years, we have been one of the top sponsors for the Mid-South Minority Business Continuum's Economic Development Forum. So we will be there all during this week, but especially on Wednesday, we'll have a booth there. I think our booth number is like 610. So if you are planning on joining and coming to this awesome event that helps support the growth of minority businesses, we would absolutely love to come.
And that is really explode. There is a lot going on.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
yes.
they have an event starting tonight and it carries through Thursday. Fantastic. If you've not, just Google the Economic Development Forum by the MMBC, and you will find great information there. And of course, our team in Arlington is always looking at ways that they can reach out in the community. So for about the third year, they are going to be at the Microport Health Fair to get to meet all the employees on Thursday. So if you work for Microport, be sure to meet Melinda and Brandy and the rest of our team. And then our anniversary ice cream days,
Ice
George.
cream.
It's time for you to come on over. We're going to be celebrating at our Poplar office this Friday from 1 to 2. So come on over, George.
Yeah, that is
and Greg.
always fun.
And out in Germantown at our office in Saddle Creek, Ben and Jerry's will be there from 3 to 4. So we would love for anybody to stop by. And, of course, ask about our CD rates that Mike just voted to allow us to raise the rates. So we're raising the roof on our CD rates.
Awesome.
They are awesome. So please be sure to ask your Triumph.
Well, it's a good time to look at CDs again, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Triumph Bank has it. Check them out. Triumph Bank, 901-333-8800. Also, triumphbank.com. See you next Tuesday.
Great to see you, George.
You're listening
Thanks.
to The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
The Memphis Daily News Report.